Hi, Hime here with a special video about Choir of Flesh, which is the newest solo TTRPG, though it can of course be played co-op or as a group, by Black Oath Entertainment. I have been playing the game pretty extensively during beta testing and just love it so much. It's already definitely in my top 3 solo TTRPGs ever, and with the Kickstarter launching soon, I wanted to do a special video to sort of show off the main mechanics of the game. And so we're going to run through some of these systems together and treat this sort of like a how-to video and a sort of deep dive for those of you that maybe don't want to sit through 20 hours of my VODs of the game instead. You know, what is Choir of Flesh? Let's talk about that first. Okay, so we're going to start by going through some of just a teensy bit of the rulebook just to introduce what this game is if you are not aware, right? So here's the fabulous cover. Choir of Flesh by Alex T, aka Black Oath Entertainment. This game does have some mature content in the sense that there's violence, some complex religious themes, etc. And so do tread lightly. Okay. The year is 1000 AD and the world is ending, not with fire, nor with sword, but with a song. It began with a crack in the heavens, a wound in the sky that bled light and melody. The celestial choir descended, and as St. John foretold in the book of Revelations, their voices weaved miracles from the very air, 7 trumpets breaking the 7 seals, which poured out the 7 bowls of God's wrath. The sick rose from their beds, whole and singing. The blind opened their eyes to behold radiant harmonies made flesh. The devout whispered of the rapture, of God's final mercy upon a sinful world. They were wrong. The choir's hymn was not salvation, it was a slow, sweet consumption. Those who listened too closely felt their bones hum in resonance, their skins splitting to birth new mouths, their prayers dissolving into wordless, cacophonous chants. Those fortunate enough died quickly, while most turned into abominations known as penitents, zealots who willingly let the choir reshape them into living weapons. That is the choir, and in case you think the other side might be better, it's not. Beneath the roots of the world, something older than God and his holy host stirs. The flesh that feeds. It is the antithesis of the choir's mad symphony, a crawling, wordless hunger that dissolves song into meat, faith into pulp. Where the choir reshapes, the flesh unmakes. Nobody knows where it first appeared, but shortly after the angels descended upon the city of Rome, the earth swallowed Toledo, a major city in Al-Andalus. Villages vanished overnight, their people kneaded into writhing, faceless mounds. This was only the beginning, though. Soon after, the whole Iberian Peninsula was gone, and the unmade spread across all Europe. Forests petrified into grotesque sculptures of tendon and marrow, lakes turned into blood. The flesh has no voice, no mind, only a terrible, infinite wanting. And caught between these twin apocalypses is what remains of mankind. And that is the setting of Choir of Flesh, which takes place in medieval France in the year 1001 AD. Your character is what is called an unbroken, and that is where we are going to start with our character creation. The old knight returns, and nobody's ready. Sarah, Edgemother. So we are going to start by creating our character, and I have printed out the sheet. So we're going to go analog for this video, okay? And so we're going to do these steps. We're going to roll and assign the attributes, determine these sort of secondary attributes, pick a weapon and an armor proficiency, a feat, including drawbacks, mayhaps, 4 skills, a sin, shard, doom, and occupation, and then of course a weapon of choice, a gambeson, and 30 rations. And in this game, your rations are also your currency, so the stuff you need to eat to survive is also the stuff you have to barter to buy stuff, basically. Okay. So I have here the character sheet, and so we're going to start by rolling for our stats. Okay, so the way that the attributes work is we are going to roll 4d6, and then we will drop the lowest of the 4. If you have watched my streams before, you know that I don't exactly have the best dice luck, so we're just going to see how it goes, and hopefully you see how it's done, and then perhaps your luck may be better than mine. We shall see. Okay, got my little dice tray so we can see the results a bit better. Okay. So I'm going to roll first, and then we were going to assign the attributes after. So I'll just sort of write the numbers at the top somewhere. So we have 4, 3, 2, and 2. 2 is the lowest, which in this case I have 2 of them, so this isn't great, but I'll toss 1 out. So if we add these together, that makes 9. So that's our first number. I'm just going to sort of write this at the top in pencil, and again we will assign which number goes to which attribute after. So we've got a 9. Now we're going to do this again. So we're going to do this 6 times. Ooh, wow, I somehow did almost exactly the same. 4, 4, 3, 2. The 2 is the lowest, so I'll drop that. So that is 11. Oh my gosh. Drop the 2. So that is 10. Okay, a little bit better. One of the 4s drops, so this is a 14. Okay, 6, 5, 5. Much better. This is 16. And then one last time. I have a 1. Let's get rid of that. So we have 4, 4, and 3, which makes 11. That's not great stats, but not terrible either. Okay, so before we assign them, I do want to briefly touch on what each of these attributes are, of course. So strength is your character's physical power and muscle strength. Makes sense. So hand-to-hand combat, etc. Constitution is your endurance, your resilience. So characters with high constitution endure physical hardships more effectively. Dexterity is your agility, reflexes, and coordination. This is what's used with dex-based weapons. It's like ranged combat. There are some melee weapons that use dex as well, but it's more for ranged weapons. Intelligence is exactly what it sounds like, your mental acuity, problem-solving ability, etc. Willpower is your inner strength and connection to spiritual or mystical forces. And then presence, that is your charisma, your charm, how well you influence, persuade, or perhaps intimidate people. So all of these are very useful in the apocalypse, of course, but it sort of just depends on what you are going for in a character. And personally, I like to design my characters based on like the role-playing aspect, but your mileage may vary. All right, so I have these numbers, and we're going to assign each of them to a stat, and then based on the score, it's going to have a certain modifier, of course. So I think for this one, I'm going to go for more of a hand-to-hand fighter. So I'm going to give this new character 16 strength. Constitution is also very important though, so I'm going to go for 14 of the Constitution. Those are like 2 of the highest stats. Then I have 11s, so let's do 11 for willpower and dexterity, because they're pretty important. And then let's do a 10 for intelligence, and then a 9 for presence, because let's say my character wants to be a loner. Let's not, try to intimidate, influence people too much. Okay. So now that we have that, I need the modifiers, which are given here. So it's sort of like D&D in the sense that based on what attribute score you have, it determines the modifier. So with the 16, that gives me a +2 in strength. Constitution is a 14, which gives me a +1. Everything else is from 9 to 11 is a 0. So 0, 0, 0, 0. So not terrible stats. No, I wouldn't say they're super great, because the highest I have is a +2, but at least I don't have any negative modifiers, so it could be a lot worse. Okay, so then moving forward, we start off with 0 anguish. Anguish here measures the crushing weight of despair, so it's sort of like psychological trauma in a way. Your carrying capacity is how much you can carry, and it's exactly what it sounds like, which is actually on a different page, this character sheet. Now your character carrying capacity is literally just your strength, so here at 16, which means that I can have 16 item slots right now. This can also be changed by other items and things that you can equip, but yeah, for now we'll just leave it that way. Everyone starts off with, I believe, 30 rations. So I'll write that there. So this is on my gear page, and then I'll go back to this page here. Okay. We've got the defense rating. So we start with the Gambison, which is just a 1 in DR. Sorry, I have a 1 armor here. My dex modifier is 0. I don't have any other things. I'll just leave that blank. So currently my defense rating is 0. Gambison, very starter type thing. Okay. My initiative is the dex mod, which is 0. I'm going to leave the other blank for now because I might get it through skills or whatnot. Your defense rating is basically what you are using to defend against enemy attacks. So when you're rolling, you get to add that in your attempts to defend from when the enemy tries to hit you. Okay. Humanity is how much of your PC's mind, body, and soul are uncorrupted by the choir or the flesh. It starts at 20 and starts to go down. So this is interesting because humanity starts at 20 and goes down. Anguish starts at 0 and slowly goes up, right? And so we gotta be careful there. And then the move, I think all PCs have a move speed of 2, but I think that will change, or perhaps change through various feats and stuff, which is why it is erasable, because you can have more move. I'm going to leave that there for now. Okay, so the next thing is to pick my weapon and armor proficiency, right? So you get to choose 1 weapon and 1 armor that your character is proficient in. So that's something that I really enjoy about this, is that you get to choose right off the bat. So the weapons here, oops, those are not weapons. Here are the weapons. The weapons that we have here, we can choose between, and it's just sort of what we feel like. Since my character has high strength, I want to make sure that I pick a strength typed weapon and not a dex type weapon, right? And I do like that these are historically accurate, so there's not that many, but that's because in medieval France we did not have that many, right? You know, I think maybe the axe might be cool. Two-handed brutal. It does have more reach. It is slower, but I get to hit things from far away. So I think that might be what I go with. So I get to start with the Dane axe, which I will write on my sheet here. Dane axe. It has a lot of traits, this Dane axe. It is two-handed. I'll just write 2H for that. Brutal. Has reach. And it is slow. The total attack bonus, I will worry about that later. It is based on my strength, so I'll get to that in a little while. It is heavy. Again, doesn't really matter right now. The two-handed is important, though. Okay, so I do get to be proficient in something, and obviously, in order for me to use the Dane axe, I have to be proficient in the Dane axe, so I'm going to add that to my proficiencies right there. And then, of course, I want to go ahead and be proficient in the Gambison, since that's what I start out with, and I'm probably not going to be able to buy any armor for a little while. Okay. So, the other nice thing about the Gambison, even though it is the starter armor, is that it can be combined with other things. So later when you get other other armor, you can equip it on top, which is really cool. Okay, and so now that we have that, we get to pick a feat. So the cool thing in this game is that there are feats and drawbacks, and I will show some of those here. Feat, you get to choose just 1 feat without having to incur a drawback, but after that, if you would like more feats, you can choose them, but for each feat, you either have to pick a drawback or roll for a drawback. Now, there is a bit of a gambling aspect in the sense that you can roll for a drawback and not get one. If you roll an 11 or 12 on the drawback table, it is no drawback. So you could potentially get 3 feats with no drawbacks at all. It is possible, though, statistically unlikely. Okay, so since my character is a melee type, I want to pick some really cool things that might work well. Let's see here. Or just things that are important. Now, this is a game where you are really trying to survive, and so picking feats that help you survive, even though they feel a little less cool in some ways, can be very helpful. So, for example, and these are some of the drawbacks on the right side here, but for example, precision warrior means that I could score a critical with a 19 or 20. And so it's not just nat 20, but a 19 as well. So that's pretty neat. Resilient is an awesome one to take because it lets you ignore the first 2 minor wounds you suffer during a fight, and that helps a lot. You know what? I'm going to take Resilient. So I could take another feat. For the purposes of this, I will try just taking 1 more feat and then rolling for a drawback. So let's see here. Let's do Skirmisher, because that increases our move by +1, and that could be very useful in combat when you're trying to get away from things. Okay, so that means that my move is going to increase from 2 to 3. And considering that my axe, my Dane axe, has reach, that could be really useful, right? Okay, so now I get to move 3 during each turn in combat, which is pretty awesome. Okay, well, since I took a feat, however, that does mean that I have to take a drawback. And so you'll see here I've changed my move there and added Skirmisher. But since I have taken a feat, I do need a drawback. So you'll see here, these are the drawbacks that you can choose between, or you can roll on the table. So there's 10 drawbacks, or you could hope to roll an 11 or 12, which means that you get no drawback at all. And of course, we love to gamble, right? So here's this. We now need a D12, so I'm going to kick these out. I'm going to take this D12. This is a very nice D12. That's easy for y'all to see. And we'll just take whatever drawback we get, but of course we're hoping for an 11 or 12. Hey, not quite, but we did get a 9. Let's see what that is. So with a 9, that gives us slow healer. When you tally up the accumulated trauma after combat, add 1 to the total. Oh, that's tough. So that means if we get hit during combat, normally when you take a major injury, you take a trauma as well at the end of combat. So you get a trauma for each major injury that you suffer. Well, now we're going to take an extra. We're a slow healer. That's not too bad. So I think I have 2 feats, 1 drawback, and I think we're gonna stop there. Okay, so I wrote that there. Okay, so after picking our feat and our drawback, we get to pick 4 skills. We can also forego one of those skills and gain 1 blessing of the flesh. And I think for this, I will do that so you can see it. So for the skills, there are many of them. They are areas of expertise that are kind of associated with different attributes. I'm going to pick 3 and then pick a blessing of the flesh to go with it, just for the thematicness, the theme of it all, right? Let's see here. Battle Frenzy. You can get +2 to all of your attack checks, but your defense is reduced by 2. Ooh, that could be useful. Or once per combat, you can make a hard strength check to ignore all damage from a single force. That is pretty neat. I like picking a strength one mainly because strength is the highest one. But you know what? They have the 2-handed weapon mastery, which we are using a 2-handed weapon. So I think we got to go with that. So let's say 2-handed weapon mastery. So I'm going to get +2 to the attack checks with this 2-handed weapon. So since I have a +2 from this and a +2 to strength for that modifier, this attack bonus is going to be a +4, which is pretty cool. Okay, so for that total attack bonus, on my character sheets, once I've added that in, I get a +2 from the 2-handed weapon mastery, +2 from my strength modifier, since this is a strength weapon, so that makes a total attack bonus of +4. Okay, and then, let's see what else. Constitution. Let's see here. Fortitude, because endurance checks are actually very important, so let's say fortitude. Okay, that'll be useful at trying to resist our wounds and trauma and such, right? So those are really important. And then we need to take 1 more. I think Unbreakable might be nice, so we get another +1 to our DR. And I'm just going to write that because that's going to get added right here. So that's a +1 to our DR. That's an other here because it's a skill. So that puts us at 2 DR right at the beginning, which is pretty neat. Let's resist some damage, shall we? So now we have that, and we're going to go ahead and take a blessing of the flesh as well. Okay, so normally when you get one, you get a blessing of the flesh and you get a stigmata of the abyss, and so it's like a perk and a drawback. However, for this character creation, we get a good one by itself. We do, however, have to roll, so I don't know what I'm going to get. But let's roll. It is going to be a d20. D20 is always very satisfying to roll, of course. Here we go. Let's see what we get. At worst, it'll be something kind of useless, right? That's a 7. Not great, but not terrible. Okay, so according to this, a 7 is, I have marrow spikes. Your bones perpetually grow and break through your skin. As a free action, you can extend or retract sharp bone spikes from your knuckles and elbows. Your unarmed attacks now deal an additional minor injury every time you strike. Not very useful, considering we have a two-handed weapon. What is the likelihood of doing an unarmed strike? But I guess in the event that I do a weapon fumble and drop my weapon during combat, I can now just smack them with my elbow or something. Okay, yeah, so I've written that down here, the bottom of the character sheet. Okay, so now that we have that, we are going to roll to determine our character's sin, shard, doom, and occupation. I'm going to kind of go through that quickly. The sin is sort of the reason why your character is an unbroken, and unbroken in this setting is the PCs. They are the ones, well, and NPCs as well, but they are sort of resistant to both the choir and the flesh. And so why are we able to do that? So we're going to roll a d10 to see why that is. Look at all the fun different dice we get to roll. It's awesome. Oh, I have this really metal-looking d10 that works. Actually, this is a percentage die, but that's fine. Alright, so that's a 4. No, it's a little hard to see. It is not super contrasted. Okay, so a 4. Avarice. Gold is real. A sword is real. A full belly is real. You cling to the tangible, material world with a ferocious greed. The choir's promises are just noise, and the flesh's hunger is a problem for others. While zealots and monsters war over the nature of reality, you are grounded by what you can hold, count, and own. So we're greedy. And I think for our character, let's say that they want money. Obsessed with money. So then the next section is a shard of the old world. So this is a keepsake, something really neat from before the twin apocalypses happened, before the choir and before the flesh kind of made the world terrible. Okay, so this one is also a d10. I guess I'll... Oh, I found this one that's not a percent die, so let's use that one. Oh, actually I found the other one that is not the percent die. It's the same kind of metal, hard to read, but I think it fits, it suits this game quite well, personally. It's black like my soul. It's a 7. We'll see if it's lucky or unlucky. Okay, 7. 7 is a key to a burned down house. The lock is gone, the home is ashes, but the key remains. It fit a door that offered safety, warmth, and belonging. Its truth is the concept of sanctuary. It is a promise you made to yourself that you will find a place to be safe again, even if you have to build it in the ruins of the world. So maybe our character is greedy, but they had a sort of a rough time, rough upbringing, and that's why they're so greedy. So key... Okay, so maybe that's why our character is obsessed with money, because they came from nothing and they remember that safety, that happy, warm home that they had, and with enough money, maybe we can bring people together and have that happen again. And I love that these tables are able to sort of pull together a story in all the randomness. Okay, a whisper of the doom. And so this is something that your character hopes for. It's a doomed purpose. It's what keeps us from succumbing to the choir or the flesh, right? That is a 9. Okay. All right, so it says the Black Bell. A smith's ledger describes a bell forged with iron from a fallen star. When rung, it produces no sound, only a wave of profound, crushing silence that can reportedly shatter the resolve of penitents and drive away the flesh's spawn. The bell is said to be lost in a city that now serves as a battlefield for the War of the Millennium, which the war is between the choir and the flesh. Okay, so we can find a bell that is lost. but it is something that will drive away both the choir and the flesh. That's what we are looking for, our doomed quest. Okay, last but not least, our former life. So what were we before the angels descended and the abyss erupted from the depths of the earth? Okay, so we are going to roll for this one as well, also a d10. So just sort of a, what did we do before the apocalypse was apocalypsing? Okay, that is a 6. As a trader, your world was one of roads, coins, and contracts. You know the value of things and how to read the desires of people. With that 10 intelligence and 9 presence, I don't think so. You are a natural negotiator and traveler. Yeah, sure, okay. So we have these skills, which we can choose one. We can choose endless stamina, haggling, or networking. Well, I don't think haggling and networking are going to be super useful, so let's take endless stamina under Constitution. Endless stamina. You are immune to fatigued. Okay, so I've added that to our sheet. All right, and then the other part of our old self does say, and I do like that this is there, so it sort of gives you some burdens for role-playing, right? So your wealth is worthless and the roads are death traps. You see everyone as a potential customer or a rival, a transactional view that isolates you from true connection. I'm going to take this a step further, and maybe our character wasn't a trader, but maybe they were like some sort of mercenary, so they cared a lot about money, but I don't think trader really suits them. So let's say that they were a mercenary before. That's why they care a lot about money and such. So but that's what's cool about this game, is you can tweak these things. You know, I think most of it, like those skills and those burdens, are still pretty good. But mercenary, money. I like this enduring theme about this character just being really money hungry, which I guess is ration hungry now. Okay. And so the last thing is that, of course, we can roll for a random name. I'm going to roll a d4 for the character's gender. Okay, that's a 2, so we made a man this time around. So let's roll our d100 to see what name this man is going to get. That's a 52, which is giving us the name Hussein. And I seem to really favor these characters from the Iberian Peninsula. I do like the way this is spelled. That's pretty. Hussein. Okay. H-U-S-A-Y-N. Hussein. So we are level 1. Currently have 0 XP, 0 DP. I'm just going to leave that blank instead of putting a 0 that I'll have to erase later anyways. But yeah, so we have created our character. I already filled in this sheet. We have the Dane axe, we have the Gambeson. Okay. And yeah, that's our character, Hussein. Moving on, we are going to create our settlement. All right. So the settlement. All settlements start as a farmstead. So we're going to fill this out. So the size is farmstead. The population is 5. We all have a large shack. We start off with the large shack. Okay. So our new settlement starts with 10 food. Nope, that's wood. Sorry, 10 food, 10 water, and D4 units of each of the other resources. So let's roll for those. Okay, I'll just go left to right. So exotics. That's a 2. Metal is a 1. Stone is a 4. Treasure is a 1. Makes sense. And then wood. I mean, I already accidentally wrote 1, so if it's a 1, at least I don't have to erase it. It's a 2. Dag nabbit. So we have 2 wood. Okay. So now we have we have all that. So currently our max spending per phase is 3. We have 2 gathering efficiency. So we have the large shack, which the build cost was 5x wood, and then the upkeep, currently there is none, so we don't have to worry about that. And then it houses 10 people. I'm just going to say houses 10. And so that is the very beginning of our settlement. The last thing is we do want to roll for our settlement name. So we have these prefixes and suffixes, so we need a d20 for both. So let's roll and see what we get. So for the prefix, let's get rid of this d4. Prefix is 11, suffix is 13. So according to this table, 11 is mercy, and then 13 is refuge. The mercy refuge. It's very to the point. All right. This place that we are trying, Hussein is trying to build up, and maybe that this can be the sanctuary that he dreamed of, right? Okay, and so with our settlement done, we can start with our exploration. So there are two different types of exploration. There is the endless travail, which is the point crawl, and that's kind of the main way we get around. And then there are incursions, which are sort of like little dungeons, which I will get to later. Let's read about the endless travail a little bit. So this journey represents the desperate journeys, this phase represents the desperate journeys undertaken by the unbroken across the blighted landscapes of what was once Europe. It is a point crawl where travel is managed as a series of movements between discrete points of interest. Unlike a traditional map where every inch of terrain is detailed, like in a hex crawl, a point crawl simplifies the landscape into a collection of locations or points connected by defined paths. To put it in modern terms, think of it less like a detailed satellite image and more like a subway map. You don't worry about the exact twists and turns of the tunnel between two stations. You only care about which stations are connected and that traveling between them takes a certain amount of time or resources. So basically, our starting point is the settlement. I'm just going to draw a little house. I'm not gifted in drawing. This is our settlement. It is mercy, refuge. We're going to start from there. And then from there, we basically are going to roll to see where the next point is. So when we are playing the Endless Travail, a day of travel is broken into 4 exploration turns, which we can use on these things, which is travel, which is 1, hunt and forage, rest, of course, and gather rumors, which we need rumors because when we gather 10 rumors, we can then go to an incursion, which is the dungeon. I guess we could stay around here and hunt and forage, but, you know, of course we want to travel. So all we are going to do is we are going to roll to see where we go. When we do that, of course, we roll a d6 to see what type of thing we find, and then we'll roll to see exactly what we find there, okay? So first we need to roll a d6. I've got plenty of those laying about. All right, so that is a 4. Ooh, that's a little hard to see. There you go. That is a 4, which means it is a natural feature. So we're going to roll on the natural feature table. So we're going to roll a d20 to see what natural feature we have found. It is a 15, which is the barren orchard, an old fruit orchard whose trees are dead and black, but still bear a single perfect petrified fruit on each branch. So I'm going to draw that. Because it's a point crawl, how they're connected is not really important, so I'm just going to do that. It is the barren orchard, so a dead tree. All right. So when we get to the place, of course, we're going to roll a d10, and this is every time we go. So even if we are backtracking, so later when we're coming back to the refuge and we're passing through this orchard again, we still need to roll. So we're going to roll a d10. If we get a 1 through 5, we're going to have an encounter. If it's a 6 through 10, then nothing happens. Well, let's see what the dice have in store for us. I rolled a 10. So nothing happens this time. Okay, so from here on, we can go ahead and roll again to get something else. Let's travel some more. So it is a fork in the road, so generate 2 new points connected to your current location. Okay, so now we have to roll for both of these. First one is a ruined landmark. And the bottom one, let's say, oh, there are 2 ruined landmarks, because this was a 2. Okay. So now, for the ruined landmark, it's also the d20, so let's just see what we get. The first one is 18, The Butcher's Grove. A copse of trees used as an open-air slaughterhouse. Skinned carcasses, most of them human, hanging from the branches. Oh my gosh, that's just trees. Okay. And then we're going to roll for the other one. That is a 14. It's hard to see. 14. So according to the table, gives us the Lord's Manor. A nobleman's manor burned to a husk. Only the stone foundation and a tall soot-stained chimney remain. Well, I don't want to make it look too similar to my Mercy's Refuge, so and I think rich people, I think Greek columns. They do have a old chimney, apparently. Oh, only the stone foundation. Oops, my bad. Lord's Manor. So we're going to use another energy. So we've used one exploration turn to go here. Let's go to the Lord's Manor because I get bad vibes from that Butcher's Grove. So let's not go there. So we're going to roll a d10. It's a 6. You know what? For the sake of this demonstration, let's say that we got a 2 instead. So, it's an encounter. Because I do want to see, I want to show what an encounter is like. So now when we have an encounter, it's not always terrible, because if you roll a 11 through 12, it could be something better, right? So you could roll against and get a survivor. You could get a purifier, which might attack you if you're corrupted, but otherwise it's not too bad. But if you roll a 1 through 10, you get an enemy, something you will have to fight, or right? So let's see what we get here. For, the purposes of this video, I hope we naturally get a 1 through 10, but if not, I'll just pretend we did. Yeah, that's a 14. So that normally would be a survivor. So you would roll on the survivor table, and they could be friendly. They could not be friendly, but there's like stories or just other events that could happen for the sake of wanting to show off combat. Oh my gosh, I rolled a 5. It's a flesh apostate. Okay. So we're going to, since it's a creature of the flesh, we're going to roll a d12 to see which of these little creepies we're going to run into. It is a d12. All right, that is a 3. It's a bone weaver. Ooh, those are nasty. Okay, so now we're going to transition into combat so you can see what that looks like. So Choir of Flesh uses this handy-dandy combat grid, and there is a multiplayer version since a 5x5 might not be very helpful if you are playing with multiple characters and then multiple enemies as a result, right? But here is the combat grid. Okay, so when we are doing combat, there are several things that we have to take into consideration, right? First thing, of course, is to determine the encounter's difficulty. So we will roll on this table that depending on the difficulty of the encounter, they're going to have different track, or there may be more of that particular enemy, right? So we're going to roll a d10 and see what is the difficulty of this particular battle. Okay, ooh, that is an 8. An 8 means it is average difficulty, which is all right. So I'm just going to draw that up here at the top. After we roll for the difficulty, we then are going to determine if one of the two sides was surprised. It's usually dictated by the circumstances. I'm going to say that this is just standard. We both saw each other. We both attacked at the same time. So now we're going to roll initiative and then compare our result with the enemy's initiative. So the cool thing about combat in this game is that every roll in combat is completely player facing. So we are not going to have to roll for what the enemies do to defend or any of that stuff, aside from a brief check to see what the enemy is going to generally do as a result of their injuries. We just get to roll to see what our character does in reaction, or how we are able to react to it, basically. So the Bone Weaver is this nasty looking guy. It says, this unmade shows a crude instinctual intelligence. It is a spindly humanoid creature whose own bones have pierced its skin to form a spiky external armor. I hate this because it's sort of like what our character is slowly becoming, right? Because we already have this where our bones are sticking out. It collects the bones of its victims and, using a secreted resin-like substance, weaves them into sharp projectiles or defensive barricades. Don't like that. Okay, so here you can see an example of the enemy stat block. There are 2 of them. And so there's going to be 2 that we put on the map. They have a ranged roll, so they're going to try to stay further away from us to shoot. And then you can see, because this is player-facing combat, you can see sort of the difficulty of all of the things we are rolling against for them, right? And so this uses what is called the DTN, or the dynamic target number. Based on the modifiers and the difficulty, so for example, this is an average attack, and so we have to beat that in order to defend, which you'll see when we play here in a moment. And then so this shows all of that, shows that we get 2 XP for this battle, what their standard, special, and support actions are. This is a spiked carapace, so it's a special ability they have. So melee attackers take 1 minor injury on hit unless they pass an average con check. This little icon here next to the number 2 means the number of players. So it's going to get multiplied depending on how many players you have. So if I was playing this as a duet, there would be 4 bone weavers. And if I was playing this with 3 people, there would be 6 bone weavers, and so on and so forth. So now that we have a nice look at what we are facing, for the rest of combat, we are going to determine our initiative. So I'm going to roll for my initiative. So the bone weavers have an initiative of 18, which is quite high because if you remember, so we actually have 0 bonus to initiative. So our total is just a 0. So we're going to roll a d20, but we don't get to add anything to it. Whereas the bone weavers get an 18. Wow, that's a 9. So needless to say, they go first. After determining who goes first, of course, we're going to set the terrain features. So the terrain features are things on the battle map, just stuff that is not going to change in position, stuff that is going to stay there. We're going to roll to see what they are. So first we're going to roll to see how many terrain features there are. So we get to roll a d12 for that. All right, I got a 3. There is 1 terrain feature. So now I'm going to roll a d10 to see what terrain feature that is, and then we'll roll to see where it goes on the map. So that is a 2, so it is difficult terrain. So it says, this square is covered in thick plant life, or maybe it's some sort of flesh tendrils. Moving through this square costs 2 move points. All right, so that is difficult terrain. So we're just going to see where that is. So we're going to roll a d10, divide it in half, and we'll do that for the row and the column. So that's 6, that's 3, so row 3. Column 3. So row 3, column C. So this is here. So I'm just going to write difficult terrain to move to pass. Okay. So it's just a little harder to get through, and it's right smack dab in the middle, so that kind of stings. Except as part of the default enemy behavior, they try to avoid terrain features unless they cannot for some reason. Okay, so now we're going to figure out where the rest of us go. Okay, and so I know I'm going to roll for each party's deployment side. So I roll a d4 for that, and it's just north, east, south, west from 1 through 4. So first I start with the enemies, so they're at a 2, so they're at the east. So this is north. Never eat soggy waffles north, east, south, west. So you go to the east and then you just fill in the blocks from top to bottom. So this is going to be the Bone Weaver 1. I'll just write Bone Weaver 1 here. Actually, I'm going to represent them so I don't have to keep erasing. And really, if you were playing this analog, I would laminate this or put this in sort of sheet protector so you can just keep reusing it and not have to print off sheets all the time. I'm going to say this is Bone Weaver 1. And then let's say this is Bone Weaver 2, because this dice is always betraying me. So here's Bone Weaver 1 and 2. Actually, maybe I want more spindly looking dice. So the nice thing is they have 3 major injuries, so I can use that to kind of show how much health they have left. This is a d6, but yeah, so they've got 3. And then I'm going to roll to see where I get to go. Okay, 3. Well, that is to the south. So this is south, and the first one to the south is here. So I'm going to go here. I have 4. I'm going to do a d6 for myself. They have range. I don't. So that kind of stinks, but yeah. So Once initiative order has been established, it is common that enemy creatures activate simultaneously since they're in groups. They activate from bottom to top, west to east. Bottom to top, west to east. So this one, then this one. Okay, so they're going to move a number of squares equal to their move. Well, the bone weavers, according to this, their stat block, have a move of 3. So they get to move quite a bit. I also get to move 3, but they are ranged. Their standard attack has a range of 3, and so they can shoot me with their bones that are shot out of their body, I guess, from 3 squares away. Before we do that, though, we're going to roll to see what they do. So there is this nice little table for combat that, based on how many injuries, and we mean major injuries here, kind of determines what they're going to do. And so the more injured they get, the more likely they are to flee or try to use a support action or something like that. Okay, so currently they have no injuries suffered, and so if we roll a 1 to 6 for them, it's standard. If it's a 7 through 10, then they'll do a special attack. And so let's roll for this first one, which is the bottom one, which according to how this works, okay? That's a 2, so that's just going to use a standard attack. And then I'll go ahead and roll for the other one just so we know ahead of time. That one is a 10. So this one is going to do a standard attack. This one is going to do a special attack. Okay, so for the Bone Weavers, its standard attack is a range of 3, and it does piercing damage. I'm all the way over here. They can move like that, though. 1, 2... Let's see, because they want to stay ranged but still be able to hit me, so I think it would move to here because now it's in range, right? And now it's going to shoot me with its standard attack. So here is what I get to do. So according to its stat block, it has an average attack. Okay, so based on that, that means that that's what I have to defend against. We have our DTN, which is our dynamic target number, and that tells us what number we are trying to roll against. So average is right here in the middle. Which number we are trying to hit is based on our total modifiers. Now, my character has a quite high defense rating. They have a defense rating of 2, and so that is their modifier. So I look at the first column and look at the +2. So I compare the +2 and then roll on over to the average. So the row is the +2, and then the column is where it says average, which means that in order for me to defend successfully, I need to roll a 13 or higher against this standard attack. So again, it's all player facing, so it has nothing to do with the enemy at all. I'm going to roll a d20. Where did I put my d20? All right, that's a 17, so I defended properly. So since my roll was higher than the DTN, I don't take any damage. So my character dodged or what have you. So now this one is going to use its special attack, and the special attack, sorry, you didn't see me pointing at the board, but yeah. So now the top one is going to use its special attack, and its special attack, according to the book, then the second one is going to use its special attack, which is a barricade that provides cover, but it is going to move to get a little closer to me for the future, right? So I would say 1, 2, 3, and then it's going to use barricade, which is the special attack. It creates 1 block of bone directly in front of itself that provides cover. So I've got this fun little crystal here. I'll just pretend that this is the barricade that it has created. It does last for 3 rounds, which kind of stinks. So I'm just gonna do a little tally here at the end of each round for how long that goes. Okay, so now both of the enemies have gone, and so it is my turn. I also have a movement of 3, right? But I have to take into consideration the range of my weapon. Now, I have a Dane axe, so it is brutal and it has reach, but it is slow. So if you take a look at these weapon traits, brutal means that when I attack with this weapon, the target's defense rating is shifted down. So that means that if the enemy's defense is normally hard, it shifts to average. If it's average, it shifts to easy, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty great. It is, however, slow, and so it does reduce my initiative by -2, which didn't matter because my initiative was so much lower than theirs anyways. But then reach. This weapon is long enough to strike foes from a distance. You can make melee attacks against targets 2 squares away, whereas normal melee is just 1. So that means that I can move up 1 here, and I can smack that one even though it's 2 squares away instead of just 1 square away, which is pretty awesome. Now, not super helpful against these dudes because they are ranged, and so even without me getting super close, they can still hit me, but still, it is something nice to think about. Now, the way that this is going to work is now I'm going to roll against the enemy's defense. So if we look back at the Bone Weaver's stat block here, you can see that their defense is easy. Okay. Oh, and I left this up so you could see. So sorry, I shifted up. I can move up 1 with my move, and then I can still hit this Bone Weaver even though it's 2 squares away. Not as useful since these guys are ranged for this particular fight, but still could be handy if I'm going against other melee creatures in the future, right? So I will be able to attack, which is what I'm going to do because this one was trying to hit me. It's all up in my business, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to roll. It goes from easy to very easy because brutal means that it's going to shift their DR down a tier. So this is where I gotta look at my modifiers. So the cool thing about Choir of Flesh is we have these things called Mastery and Burden. And Mastery and Burden are not counted as modifiers for the DTN, so they're just buffs. So normally I have a +2 modifier for Strength. I get a +2 Mastery from my 2-handed weapon mastery, but that is a mastery, so that doesn't count towards the DTN. It just enhances my roll, which is pretty great. So that means that according to this, I have a +2 here, which means that I need to beat a 9 for very easy. However, my total plus is a 4, so if you take that into account, what I actually have to roll is a 5. As long as I can roll a 5, I will hit this very easy mark. Does that make sense? Because it is very easy, right? So I just have to roll a 5. See if we manage to get that 5 or not. Okay, I rolled a 9. I rolled a 9. That is higher than 5, and so I'm able to hit them. And so because I rolled above their DR, this one gets 1 major injury. So it loses 1 of its 1 health. So it's down to 2. Now, you can die or kill by filling either of these injury trackers. So if all 6 of the minor injury ones fill up, the creature is dead. If all 3 of the major ones fill up, the creature is dead. But of course, generally speaking, it's a lot easier to do 3 major injuries than it is to do 6 minor injuries, so you know which one I'll be going for, right? And so basically that is how combat goes, and you just go turn by turn. So that would have been the end of the first round. I still have 2 more movement, so I, maybe would have considered moving. I think though, because of this cover and everything, it's not super useful for me to try to move. My character does have a lot of defense, and so it might be easier for me to just stay in one place rather than chase them around the map. But that's how the rounds go, and as hopefully the enemies die and I don't, but if I die, of course, if all 4, so I have 4 major injuries. It's part of my character sheet. I get 4 major injuries and 8 minor injuries. And that's the way, that's there, right? But remember that we do also ignore the first 2 minor wounds. And so I've created a character that's like relatively tanky, relatively survivable, right? And so battle would have just continued on in that way until one side loses. Now, let's assume that we defeat this. Remember, it was 2 XP. And so let's pretend that we won this fight. So then we gain 2 XP. There. So for the first level, we have to hit 50 XP to level up to level 2, and then it goes up slightly from there, so 54 for the next one, and so on and so forth. There's a nice little table in the game that tells you exactly how much, okay? So that would have been my next exploration, right? So I did that. We still have 2 more turns. So let's pretend that we got all 10 rumors, so we continued traveling around the map and we gather rumors. Remember, that's one of the things that you can do with an exploration turn, is to gather rumors. You do have to pass a presence check, which for this character is kind of tough because my presence is only 9, but hey, who knows, right? And so once you have 10 rumors, you are able to do an incursion. So this is the incursion map. the incursion grid, and it is a similar point crawl sort of system. It is not connected to anything on our original map that we were using for our point crawl for the endless travail, because the idea is you found some rumors about a place, you go to the place and it's connected to some of these other places, right? And then the idea is that once you leave, the place becomes overrun with monsters, so you can't come back here again. So you go in, you get what you need, you get out. So when we are generating the incursion, we have a couple of cool rules that we need to do, right? And so basically what happens is you spend the 10 rumors to generate this location. So we're going to generate the layout. And so we're going to first roll 2 d8s to decide where is the extraction zone, because that's what we need to get out. And if you aren't able to make it to the extraction zone in time, well, you die. So that's 7. That's going to be the exit. So I'm just gonna write exit. Really, this is the extraction zone. But basically, this is the square. Well, the rectangle. This is the rectangle we need to get to in order to leave the incursion at the end safely with all of our riches, right? So we have that. This is our exit down here. So then we're going to roll 2 d8s to place 2 different areas of dangerous terrain. If we were to move on to one of these, we would have to roll on the dangerous terrain table. And so we want to make sure we don't do that unless we really have to. Okay, so looking at that, we're going to roll to see where they are. So we're going to roll the d8 twice, and that's going to tell us specifically where on the map. So this one it's on block 2, and the other one is on block 4. Okay. So 2 and 4, these are going to be difficult terrain, which kind of stinks because it's going to be really hard to get to number 5. Okay, so then we're going to roll to see what, we're just going to write dangerous terrain there, and what is actually there will be determined once we get there. Forgot to write in markers so you could see it. So here's the exit. So this is dangerous, would we say dangerous terrain? Or I think in my campaign that I kind of did that. Okay, so kind of best not to go there. All right, so now we're going to fill in the rest of the grid with the other things. And so this is really cool. Alex T has created 100, and I will show you the table, 100 points of interest that go into the incursions. And so you will get basically a different incursion every single time you go. And each of these, he's written a description. What is the layout of the place? What are the things that you find there? What is the loot that you get there? So 100 of them. Now, as you can see, we've already filled in this map with 3 things. So that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we're going to roll the D100 for, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the D100 5 times, write the number first, and then we'll check the table after. And that just makes life a little bit easier. So this is 7. I'll just fill them in order. So this one is 7. This is 84. This is 33. I like the very random mix of numbers we're getting here. This is 27. And then last but not least, this is 67. Oh gosh, it's the meme number. God, don't let my students see it. 67. Okay, so now I'm going to have a look at the table of POIs to see exactly what they are. So the 7 is the Beekeeper's Apiary. Okay. I'll just fill this out in order. 27 is the Corrupted Well. Oh my goodness, that sounds awful. Corrupted Well. 33, the Empty Bakery. Noticing a trend. This feels very, like, cozy, but in the apocalypse. This is Empty Bakery, surrounded by danger. Okay, and then 67 is the Petrified Choir. Ooh, okay. Well, there's one that doesn't quite get the theme. And then 84 is the Surgeon's Tent. Yikes. I already don't like the sound of a lot of those things. Okay, so the way that you start is that you have 15 actions, incursion actions, that you get to use, kind of similar to in the Endless Travail. You get 4 exploration turns every day. We get 15 total. And if you do not get to the exit within 15 turns, you die. You are trapped in there, you get overrun by monsters, you go insane, whatever it is that you think is the ending, you die. So this is kind of board gamey, you're trying to get to the end. So you want to get as much cool loot as possible and then get the heck out of Dodge, right? So moving from one POI to the next, so moving anywhere has a cost of 1 incursion action. When you get into a fight, it costs another incursion action. So a lot of times you can avoid fights. You don't have to get into them. Of course, the XP and the loot is nice, but you don't have to get into fights. You can be stealthy, you can avoid them one way or the other. So in this case, they can, in a lot of cases, just slow you down. Scavenging. So if you're already in a POI, you can stay there and scavenge for 1 more incursion point. You roll on a table for scavenging, and you could find all sorts of cool stuff on that table. And then other things, when each specific POI has cool things that you can do there that may also cost more actions. As a house rule, I like to make so if I fail a check, I can spend another incursion action to stay there and try again, and so that's how I kind of keep it balanced out. But again, you do have to reach the exit. So for example, if I want to go here and then back and then get to all of these things like that, so that way I can go to all the things without hitting the dangers, that's fine. It does take more time because I'll have to, that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's already 9 incursion actions just for moving, let alone all the extra things that might cost, right? So I'm not going to go through the entire incursion because that would take a lot of time, but I can do an example of one just so you can get a sense of what they're like. So let's go visit the beekeeper's apiary. So where's my, let's say this is me, and I'm going to go to the beekeeper's apiary. A collection of dozens of wooden beehives sits in a field of strange, pale flowers. Instead of the normal buzzing of bees, the air hums with a faint, melodic drone that seems to harmonize with the choir's distant hymn. The honey that leaks from some of the hives is unusually thin and glows with a faint light. So this is an open field of hives, and the main prize is the queen's hive, a much larger hive at the center of the apiary. The bees are somehow part of the choir now. They will not sting unless a hive is disturbed. Their sting does no physical damage, but inflicts spiritual pain, causing a character to gain +1 anguish per sting. Obtaining the prize demands disturbing the hive, though, so any character doing so will be stung d4 times. That is a lot of anguish. You do recover from the anguish by resting in a safe place, but, if you get too much, it does rack up and it causes these different effects to happen, and so you want to avoid getting too much anguish while you're out and about. The beekeeper, now a bloated penitent, tends to his swarm. He is immune to the stings and will defend the queen's hive. So it is a penitent, and so kind of you may consider fighting the penitent, right? So it says the honey from the queen's hive is a potent substance. Consuming it heals all minor injuries but forces an average will check to avoid becoming temporarily subservient to the choir's song, suffering a -2 burden to all checks against penitents for 1 day. So it does say that to obtain the prize demands disturbing the hive, and so the way that this is written, I feel like you have some choices, right? And so somehow you can just sort of, it does say that the penitent is defending the swarm, defending the hive, but you don't necessarily, as I said earlier, you don't necessarily have to fight. If you can come up with some role play reason, like maybe you can stealthily try to use your sleight of hand and whatnot with your dex to swipe the hive so you can get stung, but maybe you can do so without the penitent noticing you, because there are some feats and skills that make you more stealthy, right? And so you could definitely come up with your own spin on things, even though this is the location. And that's what I think is cool. Of course, if you want to be Rudy Tooty Shooty, you can go and fight the penitent, but remember that when you enter combat, that's an extra incursion action. And remember that we were using 9 if we wanted to visit all these places, so that would put us at 10, and you have to be careful there. All right, but you do get that Queen's Hive, which heals all minor injuries, so that could be very useful during combat if you're sitting at 7 out of 8 and you're just like 1 away from death or something or other, right? And so that's an example of one of the points of interest inside of the incursion. And so of course you're using your incursion actions to travel around, trying to get as much loot as possible before getting to the exit and leaving. The incursion is the best way to get resources and cool stuff for your settlement, but hopefully that gives you a nice taste of what the incursions are. They are really cool little standalone dungeons. Just gives you a nice break from the rest of gameplay, and I really enjoy the way Choir of Flesh has these different phases that you can go between taking care of your settlement, exploring the wider world in the endless travail, or gathering rumors, meeting people, and getting to go in these incursions, which I think is really neat. And so let's say you get through the incursion, you make it back to your settlement. Me personally, because the incursion, when you leave, you just kind of end up back where you started. So I think it's nice to go to your incursions from the actual settlement, because that way you end up right back at your settlement afterwards. That way, if you got stung like 4 times by those bees and have 4 anguish, you're able to make it back and recover, because you do have to recover. Now you do have to use rations every day, so you've got to eat a ration a day, and you're like literally eating your currency, but it is good to keep that in mind, and that way you can make it right back to the settlement and begin resting, provided you have enough rations, of course. Okay, so now, lastly but not least, we're going to run through a settlement phase so you can see what it's like taking care of your settlement. So, returning to the settlement, we have several things that we need to take care of. Normally, we have to worry about upkeep, but we're not worrying about that right now because we don't have any buildings that require upkeep. Okay, so we're going to run through the other parts of our settlement phase just to see what that's like. I enjoy the settlement phase immensely because it is a sort of base building aspect that I love, right? Okay, so first thing also is we need to gather resources. So it's sort of what were the other citizens, which in the beginning you just have a farmstead. So you have your PC. It's a population of 5. So while I was gone, the 4 people back at the settlement were doing something, right? And so we're going to see. So we're rolling a d6. A number of d6s equal to their gathering efficiency. We have 2 of them. And for each 6 we get 1 resource of our choice. Okay, so they did their best while we were gone. Well, there's only 2 people. We only have 2 gathering efficiency because we only had 4 people doing stuff. Look at that. I got 1 6 and a 2, so I get 1 resource of my choosing. Well, we don't have a lot of metal, and I think metal might be important for other buildings we want to build in the future, other improvements. So I'm going to give us a +1 to metal. And so now we've got 2 exotics, 10 food, 2 metal, 4 stone, 1 treasure, 10 water, 2 wood. Right. So we do have to pay our upkeep, so it's 1 food and 1 water per 5 people. We have 5 people, and so our food and water are going to go down by 1, which we currently have a lot, so it's okay. Okay, so when you have 9, now have 9 food and 9 water. Okay, discontent, that's if they have any unmet needs, but all of our citizens are currently living in the shack. We all sharing the shack, and they were all fed and watered, so they're fine. We don't have anything else right now. So at this point, I want to try to build some new structures because we've got quite a bit of resources, and so we want to build some new improvements that will make life a little bit easier for our people, right? And so when we go to the book, the rule book, there is of course a section about the settlement, and so there is a section here that talks about the various improvements that we can build. So for example, we could spend 5 wood to build another large shack, but right now we only have 5 people living in a shack that houses 10, and so we really don't need that right now. So looking here's some things that would benefit us greatly. So if we build a hunter and gatherer's hut, we would get +1 food per phase. So that means that every phase, basically they're feeding themselves currently because we have so low of a population that they're only doing 1 per turn or per settlement phase, and so that would just keep them infinitely fed. And then you can see the crop field is +3, so that'll be really great later when we have more people. So the well gives us water, which is also kind of useful, and then the horeum stores 10 food, and so once we have 10 food, we can start saving it up for the winter or something, what have you, right? Also here they've got these crafting and industry ones that can give us extra wood, extra metal. I like the smithy because it lets us re-roll dice when we're checking for gathered resources. So when we were doing that gathered efficiency, that would have been really nice. But of course the smithy is expensive. Not only does it cost 5 wood and 5 stone to build it in the first place, every time we do the settlement phase we have to spend 3 wood and 2 stone just to upkeep it. So it's a very expensive building. Right now we're very resource poor, so we're not going to worry about that quite this moment. However, something we could do for now is we could build a well, because it costs 2 stone and 1 wood, and that way we can start having more water over time, because there's the hunter and gatherer's hut, the small crop field all give you more food per phase, but the well is the only one that gives you water, and I think that might be something good to store up for now for when we have more people. So I'm going to build the well. That's going to cost us 2 stone and 1 wood. And then the upkeep over time later is going to be 1 wood. So we're going to need more wood later, because right now we only have 1. But that's a future us problem. So once we have it, it's going to be 2 water per phase. So I'm adding that to our settlement sheet here. Okay, so since it costs 2 stone and 1 wood, I'm going to... Oops. Oh, I just erased metal instead of stone, my bad. Alright, well, I'll just put the metal back. We still have 2 metal. We're using 2 stone to build this, so we'll have 2 stone left. We used 1 wood to build it, so we have 1 wood left. So that'll be something later. Now, resources, we can gather that during the endless travail as well, because sometimes we just find trees and we can chop them down for lumber and stuff. But again, the majority of your resources are going to come from the incursion, and so you do want to be gathering rumors to be able to do that. Okay, so after we do that, we are going to roll for an event. So there's always going to be some sort of settlement event that happens while you're there. We're going to roll a D100 on the settlement events table and see what happens. There's a lot of things that might happen here at the settlement. Always lots of drama and so on. So this is just going to be a D100. Somehow Alex T came up with 100 different things that might happen. Some good, some bad. Alright, that is a 69. Okay, so on that table, 69, it says a powerful mutated beast, which is a hard creature, claims the territory near the settlement as its hunting ground, preying on scavengers and lookouts. It must be dealt with. So notice this is an event. I would take my map and do like a temporary, draw like a little beast here. It's a hard creature, and of course we have to roll to see what exactly it is. Since it's mutated, it's probably going to be a creature of the flesh, but I think you could kind of do it either way, and then that way you kind of have a bit of a quest, like, hey, we have to go deal with that thing. So it's not something you necessarily have to do immediately, but the threat of it is always there, and that makes for some really good role-playing and story building as well. And so yeah, so that is the settlement phase of the game. So you get to do some gathering, you do have to spend for upkeep of food and water for your citizens, but then you can use your various resources to build more improvements. And then over time, as you have more structures and as you go out and you find more people, your settlement grows. So from farmstead to maybe hamlet or even village over time with more people and more structures. And so it goes from being this teeny little shack with 5 people to hopefully like a small village where we're all just trying to huddle together during the apocalypse. But yeah, so that is basically my rundown of the major systems that make up Choir of Flesh. So hopefully if you are new to the game, or if you're just trying to get a sense of what the game plays like, this gave you a nice sneak peek. And if you liked what you saw, please consider supporting this game on Kickstarter, which will be linked below, because that one won't be running for super long, and so you want to make sure that you get in on it and get the game at an extra low price, and also support development as well. They've Alex T has some really cool stretch goals that he's hoping to meet, and I don't know about you, but I love this game so much already and would love to see more content, and so please support it if you can. If you have any questions about Choir of Flesh, you are of course welcome to ask me, but the Black Oath Discord is also super friendly, and I will link the Black Oath website down below, and that has a link to the Discord for you to join as well. I hope that this video was informative for you, and I will catch you in another video or maybe another stream. See you later. Bye.